All right, good morning. My name is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad from the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. Hope. I'll say that again. There you go. It's come through a lot better now. Good morning. My name is Damien from the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. I hope wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, whatever circumstance you're in, that you're doing okay. I'm going to be upfront. This reading session is going to be a little bit tough for me. I've got a couple of things going on in my personal life that kind of blew up yesterday. So yeah, So I'm not feeling it, but maybe reading a book, as I say, is a worthwhile activity. So I'm just getting myself a bit comfortable. I shouldn't have gone live just yet, but anyway, I'm here now. I have put the invite out for a couple of people to come and join me, but I'm not going to. I can say I did leave the notification that I was going to do this reading a little bit late. So if it's just me for this particular session, it's just me. But you can jump onto the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad YouTube channel. Sorry, the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast YouTube channel, and you'll see there's a stack of other books that I'm reading and providing commentary and opinion on. Sometimes expert and sometimes not, but that's hey. Opinions are like backsides, as they say. Everybody's got one, but we don't necessarily need to see it. Says the guy who's on the internet providing his opinion. So anyway, so currently reading On the Jews and Their Lies by Martin Luther. So it's a book from the 1500s that goes into Luther's hatred of the Jews, why he did and all that kind of stuff. And I'm reading this look, the biggest reason I'm reading this is because there are a lot of Christians are unaware that Hitler saw Luther as an inspiration, and that there are a lot of parallels between Hitler's hatred of the Jews and Luther's hatred of the Jews. And I think it's a good idea to raise these ideas and discuss them and criticize them, or agree with them if they're good ideas, criticize them if they're bad. So yeah, anyway, if you are listening, feel free to comment in the chat. Don't be shy. This isn't a one way street. But yeah, if you're watching and you want to make comment, feel free to comment. Don't be a jerk about it. Yes. Anyway, so unfortunately, because the PDF copy of the book I've got is not paged, I can't tell you what page I'm on. So all I'm going to do is read. I'm in probably the first look. Okay, what I'll do is I'll see if I can actually find the PDF. See how far in. Okay, so page 10 of 66. So that'll give you an idea of yes, I'm in the first 15 or so percent of the book. So anyway, so I'm going to read. Feel free to comment. Feel free to chat. Feel free to participate if you want. I would love comment and participation. So yeah, anyway, in 3, 2, 1. Now, let us see what Moses himself says about circumcision. In Deuteronomy 10:16, he says, "Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no longer stubborn," etc. Dear Moses, what do you mean? Does it not suffice that they are circumcised physically? They are set apart from all other nations by this holy circumcision and made a holy people of God. And you rebuke them for stubbornness against God. You belittle their holy circumcision. You revile the holy circumcised people of God. You should venture to talk like that today in their synagogues. If there were not stones conveniently near, they would resort to mud and dirt to drive you from their midst, even if you were worth 10 Moseses. He also chides them in Leviticus 26:41, saying, If then their uncircumcised heart is humbled, etc. Be careful, Moses. Do you know whom you are speaking to? You are talking to a noble, chosen, holy, circumcised people of God. And you dare to say that they have uncircumcised hearts? That is much worse than having a 7 times uncircumcised flesh. For an uncircumcised heart can have no God, and to such the circumcision of the flesh is of no avail. Only a circumcised heart can produce a people of God, and it can do this even when physical circumcision is absent or is impossible, as it was for the children of Israel during their 40 years in the wilderness. Thus, Jeremiah also takes them to task, saying in chapter 4:4, "Circumcise yourselves to the Lord, remove the foreskin of your hearts, O men of Judah, and inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my wrath go forth like fire, and burn with none to quench it." Jeremiah, you wretched heretic, you seducer and false prophet, how dare you tell that holy circumcised people of God to circumcise themselves to the Lord? Do you mean to imply that they were hitherto circumcised physically to the devil, as if God did not esteem their holy physical circumcision? Or are you furthermore threatening them with God's wrath, as an eternal fire, if they do not circumcise their hearts? But they do not mention such circumcision of the heart in their prayer, nor do they praise or thank God for it with as much as a single letter. And you dare to invalidate their holy circumcision of the flesh, making it liable to God's wrath and the eternal fire? I advise you not to enter their synagogue at all. All devils might dismember and devour you there. So the whole point, up to now, so firstly, Luther has a way with words. He, he is clearly a clever guy, but somewhat cantankerous. And so basically his point is that circumcision doesn't make you holy before God. And his point is that the Jews of his era were relying on circumcision in order to make them, he's accusing the Jews of using circumcision as their trump card in all other, in order to, act superior or act smug. I suppose just in the same way that young Earth creationists hold the Bible and act as if the Bible is their trump card against all other arguments. And so unfortunately Luther did seem to have a bit of a racing for the Jews. How can I say? I'm not. Can't say I'm an expert on this, and I have actually invited a couple of Jewish people onto the podcast to discuss, and waiting a response back. But if I have got something wrong, feel free to let me know. I'm not, I'm open to being educated and changing my mind and all that kind of stuff. But it's. So if you read these last 3 paragraphs with the idea that Luther is criticizing those Jews who rejected Jesus because they relied on their circumcision. Anyway, back to the book. In Jeremiah 6:10, we read further, "Their ears are uncircumcised; they cannot listen." Well, my dear Jeremiah, you are surely dealing roughly and inconsiderably with the noble, chosen, holy, circumcised people of God. Do you mean to say that such a holy nation has uncircumcised ears? And what is far worse, that they are unable to hear? Is that not tantamount to saying that they are not God's people? For he who cannot hear or bear to hear God's word is not of God's people. And if they are not God's people, then they are the devil's people, and then neither circumcising, nor skinning, nor scraping will avail. For God's sake, Jeremiah, stop talking like that. How can you despise and condemn holy circumcision so horribly that you separate the chosen, circumcised holy people from God, and consign them to the devil as banished and damned? Do they not praise God for having set them apart through circumcision, both from the devil and from all the other nations, and for making them a holy and peculiar people? Yea, he has spoken blasphemy. Crucify him. Crucify him. Oh, Writer for Life 724 says, hey, sorry, I'm eating dinner. Japanese curry with rice and... Oh, man. Oh, how can I read when I know you're eating that? Oh, man, I just had some toast for breakfast. So, anyway, Writer for Life 724, I hope you enjoy. And if you do have some spare time, after your dinner, feel free to join in if I'm still going. But yeah, otherwise, enjoy. And by the way, how was your anniversary dinner that you had recently? Let me know. So, we continue on. In chapter 9:25, Jeremiah says further, Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will punish those who are circumcised, but yet uncircumcised, Egypt, Judah, Edom, the sons of Ammon, Moab, and all who dwell in the desert. For all these nations are uncircumcised, and all the house of Israel is uncircumcised in heart. So I'm just reading a Writer for Life. So I'm just noticing the flow of comments. Your number wasn't called. Beautiful. That's I'm both happy to hear that and sorry to hear that. Yes, jury duty. I'll make a little aside. Jury duty. I don't know if any of you have actually been on jury duty. I was called once, and I got to the final 24. Jeez, it sounds like an American Idol, an American Idol show. Got to the final 24, but my number wasn't called. And it was to do with a firearms trafficking case where some guy was in possession of guns that had the serial numbers filed off. Minor stuff, but yeah. However, the lawyer that represented him was one of the gangland lawyers from the around the 2000s. I don't want to make this sound. How can I say? She was notorious. She was as notorious as she was good looking. She was definitely So I'm trying to. I don't want to come across as a, how can I say, demeaning. It's just like, the person involved. I think it was very how can I say, very well accepted that she was good looking, presented well, I'll say. So yes, and next comment here is, my dad was in grand jury duty. That was rough on him, and yikers. Yes, I remember you mentioning about that before, and it's so yeah, it's and I suppose this is the thing. This is the thing about the criminal justice system, is that unfortunately there are horrible people out there and who have done horrible things, and it's and this is one reason why I don't commit crimes. Is that not only the impact on me and the victim, but the victim's family, all the people who have to hear the horrible details, the judge, the jury, the lawyers. All that kind of stuff. And or you can reduce the number of victims by living a very moral life. So anyway, back to the book. In the face of this, what becomes of the arrogant boast of circumcision by reason of which the Jews claim to be a holy nation, set apart from other peoples? Here God's word lumps them together with the heathen and uncircumcised, and threatens the same visitation for both. Moreover, the best part of Israel, the noble royal tribe of Judah is mentioned here, and after that the entire house of Israel. Worst of all, he declares that the heathens are, to be sure, uncircumcised according to the flesh, but that Judah, Edom, and Israel, who are circumcised according to the flesh, are much viler than the heathen, since they have an uncircumcised heart. And this, as said before, is far worse than uncircumcised flesh. These and similar passages prove irrefutably that the Jews' arrogance and boast of circumcision over against the uncircumcised Gentiles are null and void, and, unless accompanied by something else, deserve nothing but God's wrath. God says that they have an uncircumcised heart, but the Jews do not pay attention to such a foreskin of the heart. Rather, they think that God should behold their proud circumcision in the flesh, and hear their arrogant boasts over against all Gentiles who are unable to boast of such circumcision. These blind, miserable people do not see that God condemns their uncircumcised heart so clearly and explicitly in these verses, and thereby condemns their physical circumcision, together with their boasting and their prayer. They go their way like fools, making the foreskins of their heart steadily thicker with such haughty boasts before God, and their contempt for all other people. By virtue of such futile, arrogant circumcision in the flesh, they presume to be God's only people, until the foreskin of their heart has become thicker than an iron mountain, and they can no longer hear, see, or feel their own clear scripture, which they read daily, with blind eyes overgrown, with a pelt thicker than the bark of an oak tree. Okay, so he clearly doesn't hold back, as we know here. But I'm going to pick up Luther on something that I pick up modern day Christians for, and that is the idea of using Old Testament verses to condemn to either encourage or condemn modern day people. And I think I have a guest waiting in the lobby.
Guest? What? What are you talking about?
A guest? No. Who are you? I don't know.
Who are you?
I'm the tall, friendly atheist dad, except when weird strangers come to my stream. Hello, weird stranger on the stream.
Uh-oh.
How was your Japanese curry?
Oh, it was really good. We now have an Asian market that we can go to that has a lot of really good Asian food.
Good. That's in Missouri. Okay, that's out of all places.
They're here, I swear. It's just gotta know where to look.
Okay, that's not fair enough. I just can't imagine sorry, is Missouri the deep south or the Midwest?
Midwest.
Okay, I just can't imagine them. Actually, no. Okay, if it was deep south, I'd go, okay, that's really weird. But yeah, okay, fair enough. Good to see that the times they are changing. So yeah, thanks for your comments about the jury duty. Yeah, it's just interesting. But no, I was actually planning on doing an episode on the podcast about. Now this is going to be a big aside, but about 20 years ago in Melbourne, there was a big gangland war. Obviously, the main thing was drugs, but basically, there were like 3 gangs that were operating against each other, and at various times they would be either in cooperation or competition with each other. And so, like, one person gets shot, there's a revenge killing for that, there's a revenge shooting for that, there's a revenge bashing for that, there's a revenge, it's all...
And on and on and on the cycle goes.
Correct. Just trying to think. In the end, they found there were... Just trying to think. I think there were corrupt policemen involved. And it basically, how can I say... It kind of came to a head when like the number one crime figure in Melbourne was killed in his jail cell.
Oh,
And the kind of like, I think there's still questions now about how he was killed in his jail cell, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a bit of a. So that's when the war officially stopped. When this like number one guy he was convicted on I think he was convicted on 3 murders, but he was like tied to like 10 others. It was a bit of a bit of a bloodbath. But the whole thing came to a head a few years ago when it turned out that the police were using the lawyer for most of these gangland figures as a source of information.
makes sense.
Well, it goes against all concepts of justice. Because you can't both represent your client in court, but then secretly feed the police information to have your client charged.
True, that's a breach of confidentiality.
Correct. And there's already been a couple of people who have had their convictions overturned because the police used tainted evidence. And so it was a bit of a murky situation where like the head of the police was putting pressure on this one lawyer, but also the criminals who she was representing, and there were some fairly powerful people who she was representing, were also putting pressure on her. And yeah, it was so I'm just going to move position. And so yeah, it was a bit of a so she went by a code name, and then someone, I think like a journalist, twigged that this particular informer was also this lawyer. And so for about a year or so, there was like a suppression order on the identity of this. It was like a really big thing, and it kind of sorry, yeah, and yeah, it's just yeah. So that, and so the lawyer I saw wasn't this particular lawyer, but it was like it was like another associate lawyer of hers, but she was known as the really pretty one. And it's like okay, and it's like okay, that's I can see why they say that. That's okay, that's good. I don't know if you got off, but it said I never got to the final 12. But yeah, it was an interesting time.
Hearing that kind of stuff is fascinating to me.
In that case, I would inform you to look up. Just trying to think. I'll do it now. ABC. I'll put a link in the chat because it is a. There we go. I think I found it.
Welcome to the wonderful world of lawyers, everyone.
Yeah, the respective justice systems of both Australia and. Okay, so let me then. Where is the comments? Okay, I'll put a. So that's the first one I could find. I'm a doofus. There was like a sublink in that. Okay, here we go. So the podcast is called Trace, and I think you're looking for season 2, which is about Informer X. Informer X or Witness 3838, because then she got called. She then got called by the police to testify against the people she was representing, and it became like this really murky thing. Yeah, it was all. Let me just do that there. But anyway, yeah, thank you for joining me on the reading today. So as we can see,
I apologize if I'm a little phlegmy because after I eat, I get a little phlegm. So
okay, no, fair enough. And I hope your anniversary dinner was worth the worth it. Worth it, yay. Yeah. So obviously, Luther hasn't changed his he's. The paragraph I just read, he's going back in an upswing about criticizing. So he went like the downside. Now he's gone back up. He's kind of ramping up.
He's talking about how they have uncircumcised hearts and they refuse to listen.
Yep. Which they read daily with blind eyes overgrown with a pelt thicker than the bark of an oak tree. So okay, that's an interesting insult. Anyway, I will. Where am I? There. I found my spot. So in 3, 2, 1. If God is to give ear to their prayers and praises and accept them, they must surely first purge their synagogues, mouths, and hearts of such blasphemous, shameful, false, and deceitful boasting and arrogance. Otherwise, they will only go from bad to worse and arouse God's anger ever more against themselves. For he who would pray before God dare not confront him with haughtiness and lying. He dare not praise only himself, condemn all others, claim to be God's only people, and execrate all the others, as they do. As David says in Psalm 5:4, "For thou art not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not sojourn with thee. The boastful may not stand before thy eyes. Thou hatest all evildoers. Thou destroyest those who speak lies. The Lord abhors bloodthirsty and deceitful men." But rather, as verse 7 tells us, "I through the abundance of thy steadfast love will enter thy house. I will worship toward thy holy temple in the fear of thee." This psalm applies to all men, whether circumcised or not, but particularly and especially to the Jews, for whom it was especially given and composed, as was all the rest of the scriptures also, and they are more masterfully portrayed in it than all other heathen. For they are the ones who constantly have pursued godless ways, idolatry, false doctrine, and who have had uncircumcised hearts, as Moses himself and all the prophets cry out and lament. But in all this they always claim to be pleasing to God, and they slew all the prophets on this account. They are the malicious, stiff-necked people that would not be converted from evil to good works by the preaching, reproof, and teaching of the prophets. The scriptures bear witness to this everywhere, and they still claim to be God's servants and to stand before him. They are the boastful, arrogant rascals who to the present day can do no more than boast of their race and lineage, praise only themselves, and disdain and curse all the world in their synagogues, prayers, and doctrines. Despite this, they imagine that in God's eyes they rank as his dearest children. Okay, this is that line where it says this psalm applies to all men, whether circumcised or not. It would just be easy if like God came down and said, yes, no, maybe I meant this for that people at that time. So the idea of what can I say? People taking ancient verses and making them apply universally is something that that even modern Christians do to this day.
And it doesn't always work because things do change, and that's why I always love Christians who say there's objective morality, because even in the Bible you can see places where it's subjective.
Yes. Well, it's this whole thing about objective morality is only objective as far as God's concerned. God is the object of that objective morality. So, and I think the other question in that is, what's the difference between objective and universal? Because you do hear apologists go, well, why is there a universal, objective, consistent throughout all time moral law that's written on our hearts? But then, you see that God has no problem, committing the same murder that he condemns people for, and then when he commands murder, that makes it okay. And it's like, all right. So, yep.
No, I was just going to say, with universal morality, this idea that everyone has the same morals, my favorite example I'd like to point to is, hey, you remember that island full of people we're not allowed to associate with because they have their own culture, and we've expressly been told by said people to go screw ourselves by those people the people who do show up getting cannibalized?
Ah, yes. The are we referring to that guy who rode out to? Oh, I think I know who you're talking about. I just got to work out where the place is. It's some remote Indian tribe that lives near Bangladesh. I think, like the Atlassian. Now I'm not going to sleep till I know what this is.
The missionary is one of the more famous examples, but there were other times where people tried to communicate with them, and it usually does not turn out well because we a lot of people who tried to civilize them, it did not work out. The people of the islands basically said, "No, we don't want this. We don't want to deal with you." And so there are now rules saying you can't go in contact with them
Hmm.
because if you do, we have no guarantee you'll make it back. So
Yep,
don't rely on
John
us.
John Chow. That's the guy's name. An American. An American. Now, so he was going to North Sentinel Island.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of reminds me of. Do you remember the hymn "I Have Decided to Follow Jesus"?
Not that one.
I have decided to follow Jesus.
You are you
No
are my
turning.
sunshine.
No, I was just trying to think. No turning back. No turning. No, apparently that hymn was taken from the the Naga tribe of India, who were
Mm.
apparently converted by someone or other. And like the story I got told was that missionaries went there with a Bible. The Naga tribe killed the missionary, and then years later, when more missionaries came, they found these what were previously vicious vicious headhunting cannibals, were singing, "I have decided to follow Jesus."
I
It's like,
don't buy that.
I don't buy that for a second either, but it's just like, yeah, it's just interesting that people will make up stories to people make up stories to make themselves make a point, or
Explain the world.
explain the world. Yeah, and it's like uh in one of the other reading series I'm doing, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, by
Oh,
Frank
that
Turek.
one.
Yeah, so that one, yes. So I did part 10 yesterday, which takes us to the end of chapter 3. And yeah, just the amount of like, you can kind of tell when an apologist is overcooking an anecdote. It's not this argument by anecdote. It's sort of like, so I've kind of learned to take anecdotes from apologists with a pinch of salt.
I talked to this professor of biology. Oh, do tell. What was their name? What university did they go to? What day did you have this conversation? Please, I would love to speak with them and get their side of the story.
Yes, exactly. It's oh boy, yep. And look, even if you do get details, like it might say, "Oh, at the University of Miami," or at the University of, okay,
Oklahoma.
when, where, yeah, it's anyway. The next paragraph. I'm just looking ahead at the next paragraph, and yeah, Luther's now getting his fire up.
Uh
So
oh.
in yes, batten down the hatches. 3, 2, 1. They are real liars and bloodhounds who have not only continually perverted and falsified all of Scripture with their mendacious glosses from the beginning until the present day. Their heart's most ardent sighing and yearning and hoping is set on the day on which they can deal with us Gentiles, as they did with the Gentiles in Persia at the time of Esther. Oh, how fond they are of the book of Esther, which is so beautifully attuned to their bloodthirsty, vengeful, murderous yearning and hope. The sun has never shone on a more bloodthirsty and vengeful people than they are, who imagine that they are God's people who have been commissioned and commanded to murder and to slay the Gentiles. In fact, the most important thing that they expect of their Messiah is that he will murder and kill the entire world with their sword. They treated us Christians in this manner at the very beginning throughout all the world. They would still like to do this if they had the power, and often enough have made the attempt, for which they have got their snouts boxed lustily.
Um, question.
Yes.
Do you remember Esther being like that? Because I don't remember the book of Esther being like that.
The only thing I can think of is that once Esther makes her request before the king allows the Jews to defend themselves against the original decree from Haman.
Okay.
So basically, Haman goes to the king. He says, hey king, there's a group of people who refuse to worship you. What shall we do with them? And the king goes, well, fucking smash them. Get rid of them. That kind of stuff. Esther then finds out that Haman has plotted against her people, and then it then turns out that the king can't sleep one night, and so he finds out that Mordecai helped save an assassination attempt against the king, and so there's a bit of interplay there. But then eventually, Esther gets permission from the king to provide for the Jews to defend themselves, and that's where I think the Feast of Purim comes from. If you're either
supposedly
correct, yes, well, exactly, supposedly, and so I think the only thing that I can think of is that when Luther is referring to the Jews defending themselves, that like I don't know, aside from the Bible, I don't know of any times where Jews have proactively taken land.
that would be something to talk to a rabbi about, see if they know more information.
Well, I suppose if you want to call the current occupation of Palestine, that's a bit here.
I'm not
and there,
touching that with a 10-foot pole.
No, exactly. That's a bit of a hot topic, but yeah. But it's interesting that but I see a few parallels with Christian nationalism here as well. In that Luther accuses the Jews of wanting to wreak bloodshed and havoc on those who don't follow their way. Yet you look at the Christian nationalists in America, and particularly the KKK, who are a Christian nationalist group, who have no problem using violence to assert their ideology.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't want to,
sorry, you first.
I was just going to say, even if you wanted to say do something that was earlier than Luther's time, that you could point to and say, excuse me, you could point to the Crusades and the Inquisitions.
Yes.
To show that Christians have done the exact same in the name of conversion, and this is our land. It's a holy land. It's mine now. No, it's not, because you kicked my butt. Okay.
And on commission from God as well. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Luther's accusing the Jews of acting like they have a commission from God, or wanting to have a commission from God. Yet, you see here that just as you said, the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, and the Christian nationalism in America today, that isn't working out so well.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we'll go back to the book. 3, 2, 1. We can perhaps enlarge on this subject later, but let us now return to their false, lying boast regarding circumcision. These shameful liars are well aware that they are not the exclusive people of God, even if they did possess circumcision to the exclusion of all other nations. They also know that the foreskin is no obstacle to being a people of God, and still they brazenly strut before God, lie and boast about being God's only people by reason of their physical circumcision, unmindful of the circumcision of the heart. Against this, there are weighty scriptural examples. In the first place, we adduce Job, who, as they say, descended from Nahor. God did not impose circumcision on him and his heirs, and yet his book shows clearly that there were very few great saints in Israel who were the equal of him and of his people. Nor did the prophet Elisha oblige Naaman of Syria to become circumcised, and yet he was sanctified and became a child of God, and undoubtedly many others with him. But then this kind of this thing kind of goes against the whole thing that, well, hold on, if God accepts circumcision, So if God accepts people who aren't circumcised when he had a clear covenant of circumcision, then what's the point of circumcision? Something
Control.
I...
I'm
That
sorry.
might... That...
That was too fast.
That was a bit too fast, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's just,
But no, in
yeah,
all
it's just...
seriousness, in psychological, in when it comes to the psychology of people, if you look outwardly different from someone else, it can cause a similar effect of like being ostracized because you look different and people will make fun of you for looking different or acting different. And so you will cling to your community tighter than you did before in an attempt to protect yourself, and also because they will justify you're doing the right thing, you're saying and looking and acting the way that you're supposed to, you are doing fine. So for me at least, I see it as kind of a form of control because if people are going to see that, they're going to notice it, they're going to make fun of you for it. If you turn to the community will say, no, you're doing the right thing. So it'll
So
keep you
sort
there
of like
longer.
sort of like, I think Dawkins' concept of altruists with green beards. But sort of like the opposite of that, like, where if you're not one of the ones with green beards, then you're not one of us. Or tribalism, tribalism may be the best word.
I was more
Anyway,
thinking of the bite
also,
model, but similar
oh,
ideas.
yeah. Ah, yes, that's well. I suppose the bite model is just green beards for ideology, rather than for physicality. Anyway, 3, 2, 1. Furthermore, there stands the whole of the prophet Jonah, who converted Nineveh to God and preserved it together with kings, princes, lords, land, and people, yet did not circumcise these people. Similarly, Daniel converted the great kings and peoples of Babylon and Persia, such as Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, Darius, and yet they remained Gentiles, uncircumcised, and did not become Jews. Hold on. If he converted them, then how can he say that they didn't become Jews when he converted? Okay, don't get that. But also when he says like, but it seems like he is taking the idea of Jonah literally as well. The idea that a man runs away from God, gets eaten by a fish, somehow survives 3 days, gets bathed up, goes to the town, preaches to the town, gets angry that God doesn't kill the town. God raises a plant for him, then kills the plant to prove a point, because of course, and then yeah. But
Did
I'm just trying to
did
imagine like
Nineveh
if
convert?
yeah, they did, because that's why God didn't kill them, because they repented. Oh, but did they convert? This is the
There's
thing.
the key.
This is yes, and so if which then raises another issue, that if you can repent but no need to convert, then why the hell are apologists hell bent on getting you to church? Because they want control, because they want you to believe the same things they do. They want you they want to know that you're acting the way that they think you should act. It's one of those but I'm just imagining, like, if Jonah did have to like circumcise the whole town of Nineveh, and Nineveh had, I think it's had like 120,000 people, and let's say half of those are men. That's a lot of penises he has to touch.
Well,
So,
here's the
yeah.
thing. No, from looking at it again, they just were repentant. They repented by using sackcloth and fasting and praying.
Yep.
So they didn't need to be circumcised.
No, and this is the thing. It's which again kind of goes against the narrative that you needed to be circumcised. Yeah, it's so. I suppose if God looks at the good works, then why doesn't God just care about our good works? If God cares that we look after each other, then why doesn't? Sorry, I'm just going to move my mic because it's getting a little bit 2 6.
One.
Don't count on me. Thank you very much.
I didn't know if you could hear me or not.
I don't trust me. I can. No, it does actually. Yeah, it comes. Yeah, it does come through. If I mute my mic, it only blocks one way. It doesn't block the outcoming. It only blocks incoming. Now you were saying, or we were saying, oh yeah. So if the whole idea of like if you can be on the good side of God by only, how can I say, like looking, like being good to one another, then what's the point of Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we don't
Because he could
need,
obviously forgive them. Why did he need a blood sacrifice?
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't remember any blood sacrifice. And Nineveh being far away from from the temple, there will be no opportunity for sacrifice. And I don't know if there was a temple erected in Nineveh, or and you can't erect. Well, if you can erect altars, but God gets really pissy if you erect altars without Him knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a weird one in that you have these weird examples in the Bible where God is okay to forgive people without
Mm-hmm.
needing any penis bits.
So then the
Then
question becomes: Are these people literally taking the Book of Jonah as 100% truth, or are they only using it as a parable?
well, this is a weird thing, because are parables meant to be stories, or are parables meant to be anecdotes from real life?
My personal experience would say yes, but
Well, how can I say? I always thought parables were just stories, but then I had an influential preacher who came to my church once, and he went, no, like for example, the story of the prodigal son. He was of the opinion that, for example, there was literally a son who literally went to a foreign land and who literally said, I want my inheritance, and who literally spent it on. But Jesus was giving the cut down version in order to make a point.
see, I've never heard that. I've always heard that it was just supposed to be a story to convey a message or a
Uh,
lesson.
indeed, and this is the thing that Christianity can't get its story straight. Are the parables meant to be, are the parables meant to be, real life anecdotes, or just like Aesop's fables, where you set up a story with a good guy and a bad guy in order to
So
to
the
make to make a point.
the dictionary definition of a parable is, it just says a simple story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson.
Okay.
So could be anything.
Well, that's well. So it could be based off real life analogies, but no, but yeah. So this particular preacher literally said that they were stories that Jesus was giving the cut down version of. So your point that Jonah was a or Noah was a also sorry, Jonah. Getting these biblical figures confused. Yeah, they were. How can I say? The idea that they weren't literal figures would render all the Sunday school stories moot.
At least a good chunk of them.
Oh, indeed. But yeah, it's weird. Anyway, where was we?
What
Maybe
is
so,
God to do with such prayer?
and praise which they bring forth together with their coarse, blasphemous lying, contrary to all Scripture, as already stated. He will indeed hear them and bring them back to their country. I mean that if they were dwelling in heaven, such boasts, prayers, praise, and lies about circumcision alone would hurl them instantly into the abyss of hell. I have already written about this against the Sabbatarians. Therefore, dear Christian, be on your guard against such damnable people whom God has permitted to sink into such profound abominations and lies. For all they do and say must be sheer lying, blasphemy, and malice, however fine it may look. But you may ask, of what use then is circumcision? Or why did God command it so strictly? We answer, let the Jews fret about that. What does that matter to us Gentiles? It was not imposed on us, as you have heard, nor do we stand in need of it, but we can be God's people without it, just as the people in Nineveh, in Babylon, in Persia, and in Egypt were. And no one can prove that God ever commanded a prophet or a Jew to circumcise the Gentiles. Now, I'm going to pause here for a sec because this raises another point. That if one common apologetic I hear is that God's law only applied to a certain people for a certain time, for a certain certain circumstance. Yet God seems to have no problem pronouncing judgment on the other nations for what? For not following the law that He didn't tell them to follow.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. It's like, well, let me just go back here. Let the Jews fret about circumcision. Then why do preachers I suppose homosexuality is one of the big ones. But why do preachers use Old Testament verses to make us atheists in the modern age feel bad about something that doesn't harm anyone? It's
I
So
mean,
if,
you know what my answer would probably be to that, but
oh, feel free to say it anyway. I'm not
control.
Oh, the C word, yes. Control, yes. And that's the thing, like the amount of street preachers who use psalms and who use the ten. Actually, I find it funny that Christians in your country will put up a Ten Commandments monument.
Oh, so okay. Lawmakers try to do that because majority of the U.S. is Christian, and of those Christians, majority of them are evangelical, and
Yep.
they like a lot of evangelical Christians like to show their faith and scream it out from the heavens that this is their belief and this is their faith, which as long as it's on your private property, you do you, but when it's public property, there's supposed to be a division saying,
neutral.
no, you can't do that.
Yep.
And that's when the Satanic Temple rolls in and says, hey, if you can put the Ten Commandments there, we can put a Baphomet statue up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's I'm well aware of their particular fight they've been having about that. I think that was in Arkansas, wasn't it?
Oh, there's been several states.
True. Yeah.
Like
So
that.
I remember Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas. You can't even spell your own goddamn states correctly. Oh my god.
Hey, I'm not the one who made the state names.
Right? I know, but you're closer than me, so you go tell them off from. Yeah. So it's just this weird thing that they, and then didn't someone like drive into the?
Someone drove into one of the Ten Commandments. Yeah.
And there was another incident I heard about where someone anointed the monument with olive oil, which then corroded the monument.
They got permission to do it.
I was like, oh my god, this is the thing, like if we're not bound by the Old Testament, why the fudge do, Christians have this hang up about saying we have to follow the Ten Commandments? And then this whole thing that, our law is based on Judeo-Christian values. Bullshit. Bullshit. Like the first four are just, thou shalt worship no other God, keep the Sabbath. What else was there?
Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You shall have no other gods before me.
Yep.
Shoot, what's that second one?
What is the second one?
You should not use the name of the Lord your God in vain.
Yes. So no other gods, no idols. Don't use the Lord's name in vain. Keep the Sabbath day holy. None of those are in law. Honor your mother and father. Well, that's not in law either. You shall not murder. Every country, every culture has that. You should not commit adultery. Well, tell that to the politicians who are making those laws, for a start. You shall not steal. Tell that to the politicians who are making those laws. You should not bear false witness. or the cops. You should not be a false witness against your neighbor. Well, even I know lying is wrong, but
I'm not gonna say Texas,
but yes, yeah, that's yes.
Not gonna say anything more about that. That's all I'm gonna say about the subject.
And then you shall not covet. Well, okay, but covet. Oh, sorry. Covet refers to property, and one of the things that the expansion of that passage refers to is you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor your neighbor's. You're right there. You're right there, Jax.
I'm sorry.
A little bit.
I'm sorry. I heard women were property, and I got a little bit miffed. Something got stuck in my throat. I don't know what that was.
I know. Gender equality. That's clearly not the Bible. And so, like, you shall not covet your neighbour's wife, nor your neighbour's servant. Well, if the whole thing wasn't about property, then why include people in there?
Because people were seen as property. There we go, class.
Yes, if this is the one lesson you take away from today, that the Bible considered women as either property and or baby machines.
Or both.
Correct, yes. Correct indeed.
But no, the explanation that I was given, because I asked about this to one of the pastors that I knew. And the reason that he gave was that some of the laws were no longer part of the covenant, but some still were, and so that was kind of their excuse to pick and choose.
Yes.
Which laws were to be followed still. So the Ten Commandments were still there because technically they weren't covered by Jesus' sacrifice, so therefore you still have to obey those laws. And then you get to the Levitical laws, and then they start picking and choosing, and you go, hold on 2 seconds here.
And then you get this weird BS distinction between ceremonial law, purity law, civil law. Bull crap.
Those distinctions did not exist.
No, exactly. But again, telling that to people who are blinded by their theology, it's very very hard to get that.
It's one of those situations where different denominations will have different views on it, and as a result you see all sorts of different answers, and I'm just sitting there like, this is why the Bible should have been clear, but it's not. So here we are with 20,000 denominations of you.
Indeed. And it kind of reminds me of the snarky remark I made to Cameron from Capturing Christianity. He recently tweeted a thing where apparently he did like a 5-hour podcast about the evidence for Jesus or something like that. I just said, look, mate, God could have saved you 5 hours if you just came down directly and like proved it once and for all, It's like, okay, yep, that's
Apologia has had so much fun with Cameron.
Yes, but apparently the fun only goes one way. Because there was a thing I remember where Cameron did insinuate that Paul Gia was being intentionally dishonest.
Him and Andrew Loke.
Yes, him and I think he also got in on. Andrew Loke. Yes, that was a fun time.
They did supposedly apologize for that, but that's a whole other subject.
Indeed. Anyway, Jax, I'm gonna cut the reading for today. So next time, well, look, if you're available next time, I'd love to have you on board.
Hopefully, I'm not eating curry next time.
Eat as much curry as you want. It's your toilet and your bowels that have to pay the price for it.
Japanese curry is a lot milder.
True. I get that. Anyway, to anyone listening, look after yourselves, stay well, stay safe, and be kind to another. See you later.